we are careening towards a very dark future. In the year 2030, AI bots have taken over. Underground hacker groups terrorized our every waking movement, and you can't even enjoy a midday cafe trip without getting your phone stolen. Overweight men who forget to wear a tie desperately invent time travel in order to stop it all from happening. And is this man responsible for it all? This is the world according to the United States Cybersecurity Signal Office, and it's up to you to stop it. I mean, kinda. See, every year, all people across the DoD have to complete their annual cyber awareness training, which along with updating your emergency contact info and ensuring your SGLI is accurate are just one of the many check the block things that make people do unreasonable things after work. If you're like me, and by that I mean just like a normal person, you just skipped through the thing as fast as you possibly could because you probably had other more important things to do during the day, or you just didn't want to be bored to tears for hours on end. Or if you're really smart, you looked up the Quizlet answers beforehand and then you just tested out of the pretest so you didn't know how to do it. It was great. But if you connect all the pieces of the cyber awareness training, you get some of the most nonsensical storytelling in modern entertainment, along with strange scenarios, very memorable characters, all of which you missed if, like me, you are beating the skip dialogue button like it owed you money. Regardless if you've done your cyber awareness for 1 year or faithfully for 20, I promise you there is something you missed. So let's get started. You play as an autistic man on his first day of work, working at an unmanned joint service government security organization. Your character never actually speaks, so combining being the new guy and a silent protagonist, one can assume this is the great-great-great-grandfather of the rookie from Halo. A voice playing inside your head explains how to use the heads-up display that is seemingly installed over your retinas. I just like to imagine this guy showed up for his first day of work wearing like one of those Apple Vision things. You put your CAC in an obtusely large ID reader and open your computer to start your day. You seem to have an affinity for birds and insanely long passwords. Now, despite it being your first day, you already have 5 files on your computer all named FOUO. I didn't even know Windows let you save multiple files with the exact same name. Plus, the idea of naming each folder FOUO, which stands for official use only, and in not helpful ways to describe what the files are used for, is psychopathic behavior. You hear that the government has experienced an increased number of cyber attacks in recent months, and it's up to you to ensure your vaguely named files don't get in the hands of wrongdoers. The voice in your head introduces the first NPC of the game, Jeff, your information point of contact, who, with his ironic wearing of a sweater vest and rolled up sleeves, would mean that he is either an unbearable hipster or an absolute savage who conquered nations in a previous life. The game then introduces the first scoring mechanic. Making choices that help defend against cyber attacks will garner you points, while bad ones will help mysterious hackers who wear balaclavas without eye holes. If you beat every challenge correctly, you can reach a score of up to 3,550 points, which to me is just an arbitrarily annoying number. The man living in your head continues to control your computer by showing you stock IT videos tinted red to give the Earth a menacing look. Then we are rudely interrupted by a new NPC, Tina, who, like a good coworker greeting a new employee, informs you that the office enjoys listening to music at work using MyTunes and that you should do the same. Now, the game gives you 2 dialogue options, which means it's worse than Fallout 4. Either immediately download MyTunes without saying a single word in response, or say no thanks. Can you imagine if that was like real life, where you go up to your new coworker and hello, other normal human being, would you like to listen to music with us? And the guy just looks at you and says no thanks. And like that was it. Insanity. I love it. Like the schizoid you are, you listen to the voices in your head and win 25 points for not downloading anything. Tina slaps back and then offers that if you get bored, you should play one of the games made by one of your coworkers, Mark, and then Tina offers a CD with him on it. Because you're locked in and don't care about things like interpreting social cues, you tell Lena to rightly fuck off, which she does, and you're rewarded with a digital trophy. Suddenly, your phone rings, and with a reaction time that rivals that of a deceased sloth, you use your Zoom vision to see that caller ID says unavailable. The person on the phone identifies themselves as Kevin from IT, which kicks your TISM spidey senses up to 11. After interrogating Kevin from IT, he asks for your IP address, and without another word, you call up Jeff to get him in on the scoop. Suddenly, you're alerted to a loud banging sound coming from down the hall, and you find that it's a soldier in the window who forgot their ID to get them into the door. She then asks if you could let her in. You, of course, immediately report her to Jeff and go back to your desk. After some dork in a blue camo asks if a CD that was lying near your desk was yours that was dropped, instead of saying no like a normal person, you instead say that you are refusing to put the CD into your computer. Navy guy, like a normal human being, says that he will leave it on the desk in case the owner turns up, and instead of flipping the CD over to see what it actually is, you immediately alert Jeff for the 3rd time in 1 day. Jeff then calls you into his office, where a totally legit looking bar graph shows that cyber attacks are increasing and that it's up to you to stop them. After returning to your desk having accomplished 0 work for the day, a woman named Coworker invites you to a local cafe for lunch, and we can only assume that she was put up to this by your other office mates because you're being weird as hell and have no social skills. You attempt to first ignore the woman, then try to alert Jeff that a female is speaking to you, you. But here's where the game design breaks down a little bit and forces you to go to the cafe with her. I really hate it when game developers want to force us to play a certain way, because I would have done the exact same thing the character tried to do. At the cafe, a strange man asks to borrow your phone and check his email, but you shut homeboy down faster than Jeff would seduce your mother. Distraught, the man turns away, and instead of interacting with the woman who invited you to the cafe, you immediately turn your attention to your iPad. But you're so busy trying to catch up on the Tropian lore that you don't realize homeboy with the collar sweater combo jacked your sweet BlackBerry. Instead of reacting like a human, you continue to stare at the table to contemplate your next move, which is of course to call Jeff. Looking up, you see the door closing and realize that if you hadn't been hyper-focused on the wood grain pattern in front of you, you might have been able to catch him. When you return to work, instead of actually doing any of your required tasks, you play games like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and then a visual novel that recounts the tales of the 3 pigs and the big bad wolf. Your schizophrenia-induced hallucinations then lead you to tearing apart a disorganized desk looking for security violations in an effort to save the United States from peril. The hallucinations persist, and because you presumably gave Jeff your antipsychotics because they might have tiny hacker chips in them, you begin to imagine yourself as a noir detective. You're transported to a moody office with the files of possible insider threats thrown on your desk. A woman named Spy calls us, letting us know that there is a second spy inside of our organization, leaking all of our secrets to the highest bidder. She reminds us that most federal employees like you are loyal, patriotic citizens, but some are bad apples, and then challenges you to find the ones working with her. The writing here feels really lazy because we reported 3 of our coworkers to Jeff for thinking they'd hack us and 1 just for being a woman. But when the literal self-identified spy calls us personally to tell us that there is another insider in our organization, do you call Jeff? No, you start flipping through the files to be the hero of your own story. After about 3 minutes of getting the tea on Todd sucking at his job, Helen defaulting on her car payment, and Jack's rough divorce from his bitch wife, you narc on all of them, before finally being released from your prophetic visions and you're back at your desk, wondering if it was all a dream. The rest of your day is spent reporting more women for trying to talk to you, answering scam emails, and then stopping by Jeff's office to close the day out, who tells you that cyber attacks are at an all-time low. Not only that, but by being rude to Tina, it set off a chain of events that led to the United States arresting the Red Licorice Man. And after closer inspection, you'll see that Jeff has his language settings set to a different language. Now, at first glance, it appears to be Latin, but it's actually lorem ipsum, which is a placeholder pseudo-Latin text typically used in web publishers and designers. Did the web developers just get lazy when they were designing this? 100%. Am I going to spin it into something that it is definitely not? 110%. Here's the weird thing. If we look at the URL, we'll notice it begins with HTTP and not HTTPS. And this might not seem like a big deal, but it could be the key to figuring out where it all went wrong. HTTPS stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. And the difference between it and just HTTP, no S, is that it encrypts the data between you and the web server and ensures data integrity between you and the website. It does a lot more than that, but I'm not a computer person, and if I say any more, I'm just gonna get lit up in the comments, so apologies in advance. Here's the catch though. It's in the cyber awareness training not to click on links that don't have HTTPS. And this guy is allegedly the head of cybersecurity for the entire office, but he's over here breaking the rules you learn on day 1. Something's going on here, and things are not as they seem. He reminds us not to be lazy about cybersecurity like a massive hypocrite, and we are teleported home by a blinding white matrix of blue squares. Once we arrive home, we immediately go straight to our computer because you know damn well this guy doesn't have a wife and kids waiting for him when he gets back. Here we see his computer background as the American flag and profile icon as another bird, but this time a bald eagle. I feel like this guy would have done well in the world of 1984. Mr. Voice in head lets us know that we have to register for a conference, but the deadline is tonight. And I can only assume we haven't done this until now because we've been spending most of our time imagining being a detective. We type in DC Security Office and then hit go to first results. I cannot actually fathom doing that. That's the same energy of when you make a Tinder profile and it says one of the options is just take a selfie here and there for that to be your profile picture. And what's that? The URL is not an HTTPS connection, and the button to register is a giant rectangle with uncentered letters and multiple exclamation points. Does he also click on the hot singles near me button too? But don't worry, you don't give them cookie permission and then decline to input your credit card information, specifically because it does not have an HTTPS connection. So I guess you're just not going to the conference your boss told you to go to now. After that, you check on the discussion page for the sole purpose of ignoring a link someone posted. After updating a few programs, you get a message from Dan Simon, who identifies as the man who lives next door, who then takes over your mouse and spins it around the screen. He says this is because our wireless is unlocked, but wireless internet, mouse, finger massager, who knows, but it's unlocked. But here's the thing, remote access to a computer like that isn't as simple as logging onto someone's Wi-Fi. It requires programs and levels of security access that would be difficult and unlikely for your neighbor Dan to just randomly have. So something is definitely going on here. We end the first half of the story with a voice in your head telling you that because Licorice Man and his team of eye-holeless cronies were unsuccessful, a military drone was able to complete its mission. And if we look at the date in the article, we have October 18th, 2013, which if we look and check the news on that day was the same day a CIA drone conducted a strike that killed several civilians. Now this is the cyber awareness training as it is from 2013 to 2019, but in 2020 they released a new version, and it revealed that things were much worse than we could have anticipated. We find our character checking their Outlook, where we once again find Jeff, this time emailing us to let us know that we need to do our cyber awareness challenge by the end of the week. But suddenly we notice an email from Marty, and we're greeted with this.
Hi there. My name is Marty, and I know this is going to sound crazy to you, but I'm sending this message from the year 2030. We're in a lot of trouble right now and need your help. A series of cybersecurity incidents happening in your present have made us seriously vulnerable to our adversaries and impacted our way of life. We've put together some evidence on these incidents for you. Check them out and do what you can.
Now, one would think if you went through all the effort to create a time-traveling email, you would sell it a bit more, because he's saying that our military technologies are compromised, but the feed at the bottom tells us that drones are actively killing American citizens, which I feel has a bit more punch to it than how he phrased it. Also, why is the video of him a hologram in a hotel room? Why not just film himself and then send that instead? In what world is recording a video of you projecting yourself via hologram inside of the local Comfort Inn easier than the alternative? You learn that all these started with a Wikispills leak, which if you notice was the same group that called you in the previous chapter asking for classified information you had. Marty mentions that this leak happened while people were teleworking, meaning that COVID-19 occurs in this timeline, which also means it's in the same cinematic universe as Saving Private Ryan and Passion of the Christ. Good to know. After answering some multiple choice questions, you're informed that a man named Alex Smith was the one who leaked this harmful information that caused such a horrible future, and he did this after being paid off by a man at a conference in DC. You interrogate Alex and a few of his friends that seem a bit too pleased with the discussion, and Alex pleads ignorance while his coworkers claim he might be an insider threat after going through a dirty divorce. The game doesn't really give you any good resolution on this bit though, as it immediately starts saying how data breaches by guys in hoodies have affected millions of federal employees. Marty says you yourself have to then answer more multiple choice questions that, if answered correctly, will inform the victims of how to better protect themselves in the future, even though you're already talking to them in the future, so why don't you just tell them now? You learn that this new data breach originated from this woman after slipping into a room she didn't have an access card for. As you continue to answer questions, Marty commends you for lowering the threat level, which is indicated as a colored bar at the top of your screen. You then learn the story of Isabel, a POC that apparently was never taught what uniform and grooming standards were, who, after buying books, got their identity stolen. Her email was also then taken over, which resulted in the further spread of the hack, instigated by the first woman breaking into the off-limits room. Marty takes you through more lessons on why you shouldn't use personal emails on government laptops or plug random USB devices into them, and following the successful multiple choice guessing, you reduce the threat status all the way to green and are thanked with this.
We can't thank you enough. Your efforts paid off and prevented a catastrophe. Remember though, this doesn't mean you can stop being vigilant. Cybersecurity incidents, both big and small, happen every day.
Now, Marty, the guy who couldn't be bothered to wear a tie to help save the world, says something interesting here. He says that you, the autistic schizoid from the past, prevented the catastrophe in 2030, but that you still need to remain vigilant. This bit allows us to figure out what kind of time logic he's using, as well as figure out who was behind all of this. Now, there are two kinds of time travel logic that we can look at to frame this problem. You have the branch reality, in which changes to the past don't change the future, they just create an alternate multiverse reality in an alternate timeline. This would mean that the Marty talking to us still must live in his present, but the Marty with us now doesn't. Next is the Groundhog Day theory, in which the universe can only exist in a single timeline, and despite Marty going back in time to prevent his catastrophe, the fact that he exists in the future where it does happen implies that his time travel actually facilitates the collapse of society. Now, interestingly enough, when Jeff tells you that you have to do your cyber awareness training, he actually induces a time paradox, as by doing your cyber awareness, you would have prevented the future hacks, which would have negated you needing to do your cyber hyper-awareness, which would have led to the future still being a catastrophe. Marty, by interrupting you, prevents you from doing the training, breaking the time loop paradox, which would imply that time travel creates an alternate timeline from the one he exists in. He also happens to do this at the exact moment Jeff emails you, who I'm going to say is responsible for all of this. See, Jeff was the one that got you hired in the first place, but you're literally a bumbling idiot with no social skills and a level of dedication to the federal government that verges on cult territory. You literally do everything Jeff tells you to do while showing blind loyalty to him by reporting every conversation you have in the office. It's also because of him that you didn't go to the cybersecurity conference because the link wasn't an HTTPS address, meaning you never actually were able to learn real things on cybersecurity, ensuring that your portion of the network remained vulnerable while Jeff did the same on his. Additionally, during your detective hallucination, you never actually identified the inside man the spy referenced. You only identified insider threats that were used as examples. Also, after your neighbor Dan takes control of your computer, you set the security settings for your home computer to mirror those of the office. And those security settings are established by Jeff himself, which would also imply that it was Jeff that was the one to take over your computer in an effort to ensure you configure your network in a way that he would have control over it. Jeff was the inside man all along, and it was this series of drone strikes on 18 October that year that would set the conditions for civil unrest and lead other federal agents like Alex Smith to become disgruntled with the United States and more prone to hand over information to outsider organizations, and then start the chain of events that Marty, the overweight hologram, would have to intervene somehow, despite being unable to save himself due to time paradoxes, and seeing how you were the one who started all of this by being unable to perform independent complex problem solving, you were the only one who could fix it in your timeline. And thus ends the story of our hero, with Jeff's plans thwarted and you free to continue to try to have women who talk to you arrested. Thanks for watching, subscribe, I'll see you in the next one.